Good morning. It's always good to be together, but especially today, it feels good to be together. I'm the Reverend Kevin Tarsa. Today and next Sunday, we gather to explore the nature of resistance. Yay! Not only is something that happens in the streets or the halls of power, however, but it's something that lives in the heart, the conscience, and the daily choices of our lives. Whatever has been on your mind and in your heart since you woke up this morning, I invite you to greet the people around you, plus the people you see needing to be greeted that even aren't around you, so that after this very challenging week, we might strengthen our knowing that we are all in this together, that we are not alone. I invite you to say hello to the other people in the room, on Zoom as well as here in this room. Thank you, everyone. Here's the reminder. If your vision doesn't allow you to see this, I'm holding up my cell phone as a reminder to silence our cell phones so that we can be as present to each other and this time together as we can possibly be. It's okay to pull it out and check and make sure we're released from them. Tammy Gregerson offers our land acknowledgement this morning.
Good morning, everybody. With the basket of black acorns that's over here, we acknowledge that we are Nisenan land that was never ceded, and that the original tribal families have yet to fully recover from the genocide of their people. We understand that the Nisenan people are here among us still today. As residents or visitors to Nisenan land, we stand beside the Nisenan people and their right to sovereignty, self-governance, and self-determination through the stabilization of their people, homelands, and culture. Acknowledging these realities, we are committed to learning from, supporting, and elevating the voices of the Nisenan people and all Indigenous individuals, and working in collaboration to restore balance that was destroyed by predominantly European systems through the occupation of their land.
Tammy, thank you. And Azali offers our chalice lighting words, this ritual where we light a chalice, this symbol of our religious tradition.
We light this chalice for the courage to say no when no is required, for the strength to say yes when yes carries a cost. We light it for all who resist despair, all who resist injustice, all who resist the lie that love does not matter. May this flame remind us that resistance, rooted in love, is a sacred act.
And we'll light our candle of compassion, resistance, and resilience, a ritual we've undertaken for almost exactly a year now. We light it in these hard times to remind ourselves of our commitment to hold on to our compassion, even and maybe especially in the midst of resisting. We light it too, like the chalice, for the courage to say no when no is required, for the strength to say yes when yes carries a cost. And we light it to keep fresh before us the moments of our high resolve, in the words and the wisdom of Howard Thurman, that in fair weather or in foul, in good times or in tempests, in the days when the darkness and the foe are nameless or familiar, that we may not forget that to which our lives are committed. In other words, that we may not forget the deep values and relationships in which we ground our resilience. Thanks, Carol. Once again, there's a box here. I wonder what's in it. Interesting. A pair of black socks and a pair of socks with monkeys on them. I wonder what this has to do with resistance. What could these two pair of socks possibly have to do with practicing resistance? I can't wait to find out. Would someone like to carry the box and the light on the way to Kids Connection? It's a small box today. Anyone want to carry it? It doesn't weigh very much either. And we'd love to sing you on your way with this little light of mine.
Good morning. I'm Carol Nimick, the worship associate assisting Reverend Kevin this morning. This month we're exploring the theme resistance. As I consider it, I find it extremely complex and confusing. Many questions arise. What is resistance? Why do I resist? When do I resist? How do I resist? Is resistance just the act of opposing force or action and refusing to comply with something we feel harmful or immoral? Or might resistance provide the opportunity to open, strengthen, and connect with our inner selves and our values? How does resistance serve us individually and us here at UUCM? What is resistance for you? How do you work with it? Thanks for your being here to explore and consider these questions. Our UU community is a vibrant space for them. Welcome to this morning sharing. Always, it's good to be together.
When no one has to call it out that Black Lives Matter too, and no one has to get enraged to get the message through. When where you go is not defined by where you started from, we will have overcome. We will have overcome. When no one claims consent because he didn't hear a no, and no one blinks an eye to see a female CEO. When no smart girl would contemplate pretending to be dumb, we will have overcome. We will have overcome. When we recall that we have all been immigrants sometime, when wanting to give children better lives is not a crime, when we are shown respect, whatever nation we are from, we will have overcome. We will have adults does not divide us anymore. And we look back in amazement that we had to fight that war. When gender is no bar to who you are or can become, we will have overcome. We will have overcome. When no one sees a terrorist in every dark-skinned male, and no one feels endangered by a headscarf or a veil, when all can sense goodwill, whatever culture it is from, we will have overcome. We will have overcome.
Yes, we will.
We will have overcome.
We will.
We will have
Breathe by Lynn Unger. Breathe, said the wind. How can I breathe at a time like this when the air is full of smoke, of burning tires, burning lives? Just breathe, said the wind. Easy for you to say if the weight of injustice is not wrapped around your throat, cutting off air. I need you to breathe. I need you to breathe. Don't tell me to be calm when there's so many reasons to be angry, so much cause for despair. I didn't say to be calm, said the wind. I said, breathe. We're going to need a lot of air to make this hurricane together.
Don't tell me to be calm when there are so many reasons to be angry, so much cause for despair. Don't tell me to be calm. I didn't say to be calm, said the wind. I said to breathe. After this week, let's take some breaths together. I invite you to take some deep breaths and to let your out-breath be longer than your in-breath, and increasingly long. At your own pace. My friends, in the wake of a very difficult and frightening couple of weeks, with the violent taking of Venezuela and the stealing of its resources because the United States can, and because certain persons and interests wanted to, with only the most recent, very visible killing of someone simply for not doing quite what a masked, armed, ill-advised, and ill-prepared person demanded they do. With the unbounded demonizing and viciously destructive lying snarled in response by an entire set of people who hold the highest offices in the nation, lying and demonizing and misdirection, which I am both uncharacteristically and unequivocally willing to identify as evil. And I'm a person who passionately resists applying the label evil to anything. That behavior is evil. A couple of weeks which has thus seen so many of our deep, progressive, Unitarian Universalist values not only ignored, but trampled and ground underfoot, even more blatantly and ruthlessly and arrogantly than before, by people in public positions of power and responsibility. A couple of weeks during which many of us and many public figures have turned to each other and said, yet one more time, this is unbelievable. I once again want to invite us to believe it. To believe it now, as painful as that is, and as reluctant as we are to believe it. The unbelievable is here. And in today's service and next Sunday's service, I want to invite and encourage us, self very much included in this, to find ways as we move forward together to strengthen our willingness, our courage, our capacity, our creativity, and our skillfulness for resistance. I will share that this is really saying something, that it's coming out of the mouth of someone whose first 50 years of life were steeped very completely in the ideals of Midwestern niceness. Even conflict avoidant, Enneagram 9, peacekeeper, calm the waters, I am approaching my niceness limits. And my resistance energy is at last beginning to heat up in earnest. I'm not talking about toddler or teenage or crusty curmudgeon or knee-jerk anti-authority resistance. The kind of resistance we're talking about today arises when something in us says, this is not right. This harms. This violates the human spirit and the dignity of life. It's that resistance. Resistance often gets framed as disruption, as troublemaking, as negativity, as refusal. But resistance begins in a much quieter place. It begins when we notice that what we're being asked to accept violates our deepest values. For Unitarian Universalists and other people of faith, and by people of faith, I mean communities of people who anchor themselves together deeply and consciously in values that community has deemed life-saving and supportive of mutual flourishing. That's what I mean by a community of faith. For us Unitarian Universalists and other people of faith, resistance is grounded not in hatred, but in reverence. Reverence for human dignity, reverence for interdependence, for the fragile miracle of this world. Resistance is not about being angry all the time. It is about being awake. The question is not whether we will resist. The question is, what will we resist? And what will we refuse to let go of as we do? To help us face this set of questions together, I want to problematize civility this morning. Not to get rid of civility, but to complexify and problematize it. Because as with niceness, for all that civility offers, certain assumptions about civility have become a form of kryptonite for us, zapping us of power to cultivate our values in the world. But first, it will help me to get a read on who is in the room. So, based on your understanding of resistance, however you understand resistance, we're going to see where people are on the resistance comfort spectrum. So, who is in the about time, hell yes, let's go, it took too long, let's go? Who's in that camp? Do you feel strongly enough about that to stand, to show that that's your stance? Who's in that? To rise in body and spirit if you've got that capability? Okay. Who Who leans toward that response? Maybe not quite there yet, but leans toward that, hell yes, let's go. Okay. Take a look around. Yeah. Have a seat. Thank you very much.
Remember, some people can't stand.
Yes. Yeah. Rise as you're able. So who's in the, I understand your response, but I don't really think that's the way to go. I think that's actually a misguided approach to aim toward resistance. Who feels like they're in that end of the spectrum? Anybody? Anybody lean that way? Maybe not all the way there, but lean that way. I'm not sure that's the way to go. Wow, very unified. Anybody feel like they're in the middle somehow? Pulled toward both of those, toward resistance, but also, I'm kind of worried about the resistance path. Anybody? A little bit. Thanks for your willingness. On Zoom, I meant to give you numbers to show which of those is which, but feel free to type into the chat where you fall in that spectrum. Are you in the hell yes, let's go end, or the not so much end, or somewhere in between? What's moving me toward a willingness to find ways meaningfully to resist is all that's happening now that brings Martin Niemöller's words to mind and heart when he wrote, "First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist." We know this one. It's familiar, right? And still, wow, is it powerful in this moment. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. It's the thing we wouldn't have believed could happen here, and yet is happening. Otherwise, unidentified, masked, armed beings aggressively pulling people out of cars, off the sidewalk, out of schools, sending them to detention centers, deporting them, all with complete disregard. And so, through repetition and spectacle, beginning to normalize that this is what just happens in America. Right? We're seeing it so much. It starts to become normalized. This is just what happens. And sure, it's okay at first because it's only about those people, those inaccurately yet incessantly labeled as bad and from somewhere else, which is in this moment seen as the same thing, right? In this approach, being from somewhere else is to be seen as bad. No real need to complain or speak out for many people because it hasn't gotten to me yet. Naomi Schulman put this really powerfully and very pointedly in a way that just grabs me. She wrote this back in mid-November 2016, right after the presidential election. Based on her mother's lived experience, she wrote, "Nice people made the best Nazis. They got along, refused to make waves, looked the other way when things got ugly, and focused on happier things than politics. They were lovely people who turned their heads as their neighbors were dragged away." You know who weren't nice people? She asked at the end. Resistors. Nice people made the best Nazis. A year after the January attack on the U.S. Capitol, Alex Zamelin's book, Against Civility, was published by Beacon Press, which is the publishing wing of the Unitarian Universalist Association, of which we are a part. In it, he wrote, "We were told that the most effective way to oppose Trump," now think 2020, 2021, right? This is after that January attack. "We're told that the most effective way to oppose Trump and save the soul of our nation is to be politer, less rancorous and embittered, more compassionate and rule-abiding, more responsible in our choices and empathetic in our dialogue. Don't be too disruptive or unruly in the streets. Play by the rules of the game. Look to compromise when you can. Don't rock the boat. Don't be too loud. Stop being so angry. Listen to the police and obey their orders. Follow the law at all times." Civility appeals to the mainstream, Zamelin writes, because it conjures a sense of common ground, a non-political arena where agreement isn't too far away, where consensus is within reach, where moderation counters aggression, where reason trumps the irrational. Civility sounds like a good thing, he notes. Civility sounds like a good thing, and civility is a good thing when it comes to our relationships with neighbors and friends and family. And fellow congregants, the minister hastens to point out. In the context of these relationships, Zomlin writes, the word civility suggests warmth and affection, forgiveness and humility, and good manners, things to which we should aspire. But politics is not everyday life, he adds. At its most basic definition for me, politics is about making decisions for groups. I think that's the most succinct way to say it. Politics is about making decisions for groups. Zemlin's take is that politics is about organizing the competing interests within the community, within the group, distributing socioeconomic resources, and thus making determinations about whose lives matter and whose don't. He says we need to ask ourselves this: is civility taking us any closer to our goal of liberation for all people? Is civility taking us any closer to our goal of liberation for all people? Is it something to which we should aspire in public life as we do with our friends and neighbors? As you might expect, his answer, and history's answer, I suggest, is no. At least not always. Sure, in even-keeled times, perhaps, civility has value, appears to be a better option, and we understandably lament its decline and its loss. But as I think about the last 20 years, again and again and again and again, Democrats at the national level called for taking the high ground, called for civility, called for compromise, for playing nice and by the socially acceptable rules. So did Republicans at the national level call for civility. It's just that again and again and again and again, Republicans at the national level have had few and now no qualms about ignoring civility entirely. And in fact, taking advantage of the Democrats' commitment to civility to get exactly what those particular Republicans wanted. The unsettling truth, Zamolin claims, is that the call for civility is one of the primary ways that inequality has always been maintained. Oh, let's behave nicely. Let's not get too outside the lines. When you look back, he says, civility is exalted in the language of slaveholders. They talked about civility a lot. Segregationists, lynch mobs, and eugenicists. It's also enshrined, he says, in the language of free marketeers and preachers of fiscal responsibility. And surprisingly, he adds, it is elevated in the language of well-intentioned liberals, self-described moderates, and developed progressives. All of them, he writes, traffic in ideas about public etiquette, civility, to declare what counts as good citizenship and what doesn't, right? Good citizenship is behaving civilly. The effect of calling for absolute civility in the midst of tremendous harm and progress is that the prioritizing of civility too often allows the harm to continue. It becomes a tool for allowing suffering, encouraging apathy, and maintaining an unjust status quo. That's why it gets called for. Oh, be civil, be nice, while we do this. People of color have been pointing this out for ages, right? And still do. The way that being called to not be too loud, to not put up a fuss, not make waves, not make others uncomfortable, not to express anything with too much anger, to stay within the lines, functions most strongly and effectively to allow things to continue as they are, right? Don't disrupt the things as they are. I've long drawn on the teaching that what we resist persists. Anybody else? The idea of what we resist persists. The idea is that in focusing on something we're resisting, we in effect give it our power. We give it our time, our energy. We actually strengthen it by doing so, and we lock ourselves into this relationship with that thing we're trying to resist, that it's unhelpful. It's one of the reasons I've so long resisted the idea of resistance. But that teaching arose in the context of looking at one's inner life and one's personal behavior, popularized in concept by Carl Jung, among others. Only later did that start getting applied to external realities. And that has value, I have found, right? Sometimes the resisting that outward thing actually strengthens it. And it also has shortcomings parallel to the shortcomings of civility. It's exactly what to use in some circumstances and tragically inadequate in others. In other words, it's not a blanket application. And then in addition to all of that, in addition to all of the above, there is another reason I feel drawn to problematize political civility in our awareness this morning. And a disclaimer, I own that this has many times been exactly my response, sometimes to my own self, and I'm sure will be again, depending on the context. In my conversations within our liberal circles in Nevada County, which is who I tend to hang out with, even my nascent little baby push toward resistance energy, toward resistance language, talking about it often calls up in progressive others a strong response of wanting to move quickly towards something softer, gentler, quieter, more genteel, something more enlightened and expansive, usually with a reminder about and a call to empathy and compassion and calmness and understanding and compromise. And I totally get it. Yes, that's exactly what I have called for so often in small circles and from this very pulpit, and which I will call for again. All wonderful and important things in so many circumstances, especially in our close-in lives and relationships. Those are our values as Unitarian Universalists. And in our current extreme political circumstances, with people in office who will not only will not reciprocate civility, but who in fact will take advantage of our willingness to cling to civility to cause yet more harm. In this time, we're being called to discover and cultivate our love-anchored willingness, courage, capacity, creativity, and skills of resistance. Some of the powerful stress, fear, and anxiety some of you are holding and telling me about is, I think, exacerbated by this tension. This anxiety that people tell me is most often framed as fear plus not knowing what to do, that combination. I think that there may be a deeper aspect here in some of us of not really knowing that we can do. That there is an appropriate, potent, okay, necessary, good resistance spark in us that we can tend and feed and grow and learn to draw on for the sake of what we claim matters most to us. Good people can resist powerfully and use resistance for good. The active fostering of fear in our nation, coupled with the loud, intentional, triggering insistence on civility that calls us nice and progressive folks into line, is immobilizing people, preventing us from recognizing, from cultivating, and using the power of our resistance energy. If we are convinced that we aren't supposed to have resistance energy in us, we are stuck. Know this: resistance is not only about what we oppose, it's at least as much about what we refuse to surrender. Our compassion, our empathy, our hope, our commitment to one another. Resistance is a spark that we tend not instead of compassion and empathy, but rather in their service. It's on behalf of our compassion and our empathy for suffering that we're being called to grow our capacity to resist the causing of harm with as much creativity, courage, care, and maybe even joy as we can gather. And I know we can do it without losing our center, without abandoning our core values. Sometimes the fear is that we'll become what we are resisting in this vein. I receive a thought a day via email based on my Enneagram type. A little note comes each day, something to think about. This personality type that always wants things to be calm and smooth and peaceful. The thought that arrived in my inbox just yesterday as I was working on this sermon was, today, can you express your passion without losing your clarity and balance? Can you express your passion without losing your clarity and balance? I feel like an infant in my resistance development, Mr. Nice Guy, right? I know, well, obviously, you stood up, right? A bunch of you have much more seasoned and well-developed resistance capacity, and I look forward to learning with and from you. So we'll pick up this thread together next Sunday, the day before Martin Luther King Jr. Day, by drawing on the past and the present and our own developing hearts and sparks to ask ourselves what meaningful resistance might look like, or maybe even already looks like. Meanwhile, may we resist injustice without surrendering our humanity. May we resist harm without becoming hardened. May we practice resistance as a discipline of love. May we practice resistance as a discipline of love. My friends, so may we be.
Whoa.
So may we be. Affirmation of where we're at, right? Right? If you're here for the first time, I thought this would be the place in the service to do joys and sorrows, right? After we've been thinking, talking. So for those who are here for the first time, whether on Zoom or in the room, this ritual each week gives us a chance to take stock of the feelings, of the people, the concerns, the joys that we're carrying. Whether it's on the end of elation and happiness or somewhere in between, or there's something that's really worrying us, it's a chance to both acknowledge it and attend to it. So for some people, this time in a few moments will be a time of prayer, right? To center in on the prayer that's in your heart, given all that you're holding. For some people, it will be a time to be still and to breathe and to center our attention and our intentions. For some people, it will be a chance just to be still and quiet for a moment in a busy week. I invite us to be attentive to each other in this time, knowing that some people will be praying, some people will be focusing, some people will simply be being still, some people will really be wanting to talk to somebody. I invite us to hold each other in that quiet and that care. If you're in the room, there's a chance to take a stone from the table here and place it in the bowl of water, letting the stone be that very physical, that cool, physical, tangible sense, symbol of all that you carry, and to let it go into the bowl, this reminder that you are held by this room full of people and beyond. If you're on Zoom, you have a chance actually to be specific and share a little of something of what you carry in the chat. Or if you don't want to be specific, to type a 0 or an O, the equivalent of putting a stone in the bowl. In the beauty and the tenderness of Heather's music, I invite us to hold each other in this time and to give witness to what's in our hearts.
The wind that shakes the barley will not shake me. The wind that shakes the barley will not shake me. The wind that shakes the barley won't shake me. As my grandma told me, this I saw, though that I see. The fire that takes the kindling will not take me. The fire that takes the kindling will not take me. The fire that takes the kindling won't take me. As my grandma told me, this I saw, though that I see. The rain that floods the valley will not drown me. The rain that floods the valley will not drown me. The rain that floods the valley won't drown me. As my grandma told me, this I saw, though that I see. The hawk that stoops the sparrow will not strike me. The hawk that stoops the sparrow will not strike me. The hawk that stoops the sparrow won't strike me. As my grandma told me, this I saw, though that I see. And the dark before the dawn breaks will not bind me. The dark before the dawn breaks will not bind me. The dark before the dawn breaks will not bind me. As my grandma told me, that I saw, that I see. And the wind that shakes the barley will not shake me. The wind that shakes the barley will not shake me. The wind that shakes the barley won't shake me. As my grandma told me, that I saw, that I see. As my grandma told me, that I saw and that I see. As my grandma told me, this I saw, though that I see.
I invite you to join me in a prayer, which in our tradition does not at all claim to know or interpret where your prayer goes. It might be that thing in your heart that rises. You'll notice that in our prayers, because we have a range of religious beliefs always in our communities, this is our commitment to hold a wide range of religious beliefs, we often frame our prayers with this language: may this be such, may this be so, right? It's a way that leaves open where that intention is directed. So I invite you to apply this in your own way, but to share these words together. I'll offer a call of sorts and invite you to share the response each time. For all who resist oppression at great personal cost, may they be protected and sustained. For those who are weary, frightened, or discouraged, may they find rest and renewal. For those struggling to know when to speak and when to listen, may wisdom guide them. For our own hearts, when resistance feels heavy, may love remain our compass. For our own hearts, when resistance feels heavy, May love remain our compass.
%50 of our offering this month will support our community partner, Community Beyond Violence. Today, we're honored to have Mara DeFlavia here, who serves as the Outreach and Volunteer Director for Community Beyond Violence. Please join me in welcoming Mara.
Good morning. I just want to go off script for a second and say it feels so nice to be here today after the week we all experienced. I grew up Unitarian. I did OWL, I did Kids Workshop, I went to Romania. So the Unitarian space has a really deep place in my heart. So thank you for having me today. Feels really good to just be in this space. So I am from Community Beyond Violence. Has everyone heard of our agency before? Somewhat familiar? Okay. So we are a very unique agency in this county. We are one of a kind here. We support survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. And before I get into my spiel here, I just want to give a little disclaimer, a little trigger warning that I will be talking about domestic violence. I will be talking about violence, interpersonal, and I will be describing just very briefly some of what we've seen in our agency. So if that feels like a lot for you, I understand. Feel free to stand up, stretch, fidget, take a breath outside, do what you need to do. So I just want to begin by acknowledging that the values that bring us together in this space, compassion, dignity, justice, and resistance, those are values that deeply align with the work that we do at Community Beyond Violence. When we talk about domestic violence in California, we get a lot of mixed messages. One message is, it's on the rise. Another message is, well, calls to law enforcement have gone down, so it must be getting better, right? And that's just not the case. I can tell you firsthand with the work that we do. We are getting more calls than ever. And what I will say is there's a part that we can't ignore, which is while the numbers of calls may be going down for law enforcement, the severity of the violence has increased. So even today in California, law enforcement responds to an average of 18 domestic violence calls every hour. And that's 1 every 3 minutes. More than half of all reported domestic violence incidents now involve aggravated assault. So aggravated assault can include strangulation, assaults using objects, knives, tools, household items, and attacks to other people's bodies. These incidents occur with a much higher risk of homicide, and we are seeing that in our community here. Firearms are involved in a smaller percentage of domestic violence cases, but they're disproportionately deadly. In California, firearms are involved in more than 40% of domestic violence-related homicides. So this isn't just a nationwide or a statewide trend. We've seen what escalation can look like in this county, in Nevada County. Just last summer, in an area not too far from here, a woman had fled her home and called 911 while escaping a domestic violence assault. Deputies were able to meet her at a safe location and observed visible signs of harm and injury on her. When law enforcement attempted to contact her partner, he had barricaded himself inside of their shared home. What followed was a very long and prolonged standoff. The perpetrator was ultimately arrested on multiple felony charges, including assault with a deadly weapon and criminal threats. 11 firearms and large amounts of ammunition were removed from that residence. They shared the space with their children as well. That incident did not end in homicide, but it very easily could have. So this is what escalation can look like. Domestic violence rarely begins with a barricade or a standoff or anything extreme like that. It often starts quietly with control, intimidation, and threats long before it reaches this point of crisis. At Community Beyond Violence, we see every day how early support can change outcomes. In 2024 alone, we answered 2,363 crisis line calls. We have a 24-hour crisis line, 7 days a week, and when I say there is never a dull moment, I mean there is never a dull moment. We are constantly getting flooded with calls. We also provided 3,398 nights of emergency shelter and supported 250 clients with children and delivered 4,456 counseling sessions on site. These numbers aren't abstract. They represent moments when someone was believed and someone was supported and given options before violence became irreversible. Early intervention looks like survivors calling our crisis line before an assault turns lethal. It looks like safety planning before weapons are used. And it looks like legal advocacy that helps remove an abuser from the home and protects their children. I am also proud to say that as of 2025, we have a free legal aid program that we offer. So anyone who's needing to go through the legal system in any capacity qualifies to receive free legal aid. Just last year, and we started this program in March of last year, we've already served 86 community members with free legal aid. So these services, they're not abstract, they're preventative, and they're protective, and they are quite literally life-saving. Domestic violence thrives in silence and isolation. It's reduced, though, through connection and community and compassion. While the data may show fewer calls overall, the rising severity tells us something is urgent. We cannot afford to wait until violence reaches a breaking point to act. So today, my invitation to you is a gentle one. It's to encourage you to share the services that we provide. And if you feel called, you can support this work by ensuring that that crisis line calls are answered, our shelter doors can remain opened, and advocates can be available when survivors do reach out. You can also support this work by just talking about it, sharing the services that we offer with other community members. I want to extend my sincere gratitude to this entire congregation, and I know I wasn't able to see the 9 a.m., but also to them as well. Your generosity directly helps us make those early interventions possible, and it truly makes a difference in the lives of survivors and their children right here in our community. So thank you for your compassion, your care. Thank you for passing the plate for Community Beyond Violence this month, and thank you for your commitment to showing up early, thoughtfully, and together. So thank you, guys.
So 50% of your sharing this morning will go to Community Beyond Violence. Another 50% will stay here at UUCM so we may resist what we feel is not right. As the offering baskets are passed, please also see the slide for other ways to give. Thank you for your giving in all ways, with your treasures and your heartfelt energies. We dedicate these gifts to help strengthen our partner community beyond violence and our connections, love, and resistance here at UUCM. Thank you.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. A whole bunch of our music today comes out of the experience, the lived experience of Black people in this nation, including the song Heather was just playing. But here in particular is a chance to say thank you to Heather for really heart-reaching music. Shanti created another beautiful setting for us today. Carol, thank you for being a worship associate. Thanks to those of you who read today. Mara, thank you very much for being here and helping us understand a little bit more about community beyond violence. Eileen is online week in, week out, helping support the people who are joining by Zoom. Has this sort of slightly invisible and quiet presence. Eileen makes such a difference. Thank you. Randy's often up here as a worship associate or a musician, and today is working with Cypress to be an audio-visual. Thank you, both of you, very much for coming early and spending the morning. You see Azali and Carl and Laura there as greeters. Jim was here earlier, and Shanti, please say thank you to our greeters when you head out. That quality of that welcome when you first come in makes such a difference. Corey and Cheryl are up with our...
It's Shannon. And Lindsay,
last minute change. Shannon and Lindsay. Cheryl gets to be in the service. Yeah. Please see Shannon and Lindsay upstairs. Go find them even, down, maybe as they find their way down here, and say thank you. To everyone else who makes the service happen, those who've been setting up and cleaning up refreshments and bringing refreshments. A few announcements. The Women's Circle meets tomorrow, and I think the activity is planning out activities for the year, I think is the activity this week. Volunteer at Interfaith Food Ministry. Do some good in the world with people from this community on Tuesday afternoon. Open mic night. Tom Wernick is in town. Singer, songwriter, amazing person. Tom is going to be leading an open mic. That's really wonderful on Wednesday. Thanks, Tom. Questions? See Tom. In the paisley yoked shirt here. And the Building and Grounds Work Party is next Saturday. It's a great way to do something simple that connects you to a few people, allows you to choose kind of the thing that you do that's going to work for you, and it supports the congregation at the same time. So, and I think it's supposed to be nice. I think we get some sunny days, a stretch of sunny days coming up. So I invite you to come, and whether you work inside or outside, join in that.
I also invite people to come to our first choir practice Tuesday at 6:30.
Our first choir practice, not this Tuesday, but the following Tuesday. Yeah, Ingrid Holman will lead a choir for a month-long stretch. So yeah, consider choir on. It's going to be on Tuesday evenings for this round. It's 4 weeks of rehearsals and then sing on February 15th. A good chance to come try it out. Yeah, thanks for naming that, Susan. And always, I invite you, whether you're long time or new, to check out the website to find out more of what's happening. So to close today, we're going to draw on yet another song from the African American experience, When the Spirit Says Do. And for those of us who resist being told what to do, I want to name that this Spirit saying do is not something from the outside that says do, it's that thing from the inside that says do. Whatever that is for you, maybe it's your own quiet center, maybe it's the spirit of life, that thing inside that says do. And we're going to sing some specific doings, but as we're singing, I invite you to be listening for, feeling for, what is the thing in you that feels like it's being called to be done. So it may or may not fit these words, but I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and to sing together when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do. Spirit says do. Spirit gotta sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You gotta shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you got to shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. 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 You gotta cry. You got to cry when the Spirit says cry. You got to cry when the Spirit says cry. When the Spirit says cry, you got to cry. You got to cry when the Spirit says cry. 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 Whatever it is for you, you gotta do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Resistance is not only the refusal of injustice, it is the steady practice of love. The steady practice of love. The steady practice of love. In a world that tells us that love is impractical. We're going to extinguish our chalice. We'll have chances to connect and also ultimately be going our own ways. But as we do, we remind ourselves that we're going to take the connection, the goodness, anything we've received that we value from our time together, we're going to take it with us. So we'll extinguish the chalice, but together we will carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. If you're here in the room, please join us for refreshments. They're down the hall that way. And otherwise, we'll see you next Sunday for Turn the Volume Up, the Ends of Resistance.